Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make a modern off-the-shoulder top. For this one, we're working with the Suzette stitch for some pretty texture, an overlapping off-the-shoulder band, and their short sleeve to keep the warmer weather at bay, an instant summer classic. Speaking of, if you're looking for more makes to round out your summer wardrobe, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of the most modern crochet tutorials and patterns, perfect for the summer and dropping more weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 315 grams of yarn, and that's 700 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you can crochet with both hands. I actually can, but I'm super slow when it comes to my left hand, like unbearably slow, so I don't do it too often. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size and expand onto in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making an odd number chain that starts at the corner of our underarm down to at the bottom of this top to be, so you can make this cropped or full length. I'd like for mine to be full length, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 55, and that's 13 inches or 33 centimeters. Now that we have our chain, we're going to get started on row 1, which is a half double crochet row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 does not count as a stitch. That's our turning chain, and now we're going to yarn over. Insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3 for a half double crochet. Let's do this once more. Yarn over, into that following chain, pull through all 3, and continue on with our half double crochets into every chain, leaving the last 2. We made our way all the way down with our half double crochets, and we should have all left the last 1, 2 chains, and now we're going to do a decrease of 2 half double crochets. So yarn over, into that second to last chain, pull through, also insert your hook into that last chain, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over and pull through all 4 of those loops. That is our decrease of 2 half double crochets. Now for this portion, every even number row is not going to have any increases or decreases. So all we're going to do is chain 2, flip our work, and make our way down with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So just do the first few. We're all going to start by finding that first stitch into our previous row and insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from you. Pull through all 3. Again, yarn over, into that following stitch, insert into that back loop, pull through all 3. Continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then at the end of this row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way back up, leaving the last 2 stitches so we can decrease together just once more. Alright, so we are back. We should all have 1, 2, 3 rows nearly finished. At the end of our row 3, we should have left the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to do another decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over, inserting your hook into that second to last stitch's back loop, pull through. Also insert your hook into that last stitch's back loop, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4. Then from here it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So our following row, which is an even number row, is going to be a back loop half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases. Then the row after that Our odd number row is going to be a back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and then into the last two, a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles. Continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have a portion that can reach from the side of the base of our neck over to mid-chest. And I'll meet you back right after an odd number row or along the top, so then we can do the other side of our middle detail. Alrighty, so I am back. The first half of my middle detail is all finished. I have a total of 5 rows, and my width is roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now we're going to mirror everything that we did here on the other side. So y'all should have ended along the top right after an odd number row, and what we're going to do is chain 2 and flip our work. But when we do our chain 2, we are all going to be inserting a stitch marker into that first chain, because that is going to act as our middle stitch once we get there when we're getting started on the shoulder band. So into that first chain, insert a stitch marker, and now we're going to start repeating this side. So since our previous row ended with a decrease, we're going to start our following row off with an increase. So flip our work, and now we're going to yarn over, find that first stitch, insert into that back loop with 2 back loop half double crochets all into that same first stitch. Now that is our increase of 2 back loop half double crochets. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, working our way all the way back up, because remember on the other side we only did a decrease into every other row. Now from here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So now, starting our even number row with an increase, and now our odd number rows don't have any increases or decreases into them until we have the same amount of rows that we have for our decrease portion. And then I will meet you back. Alrighty, so we are back. I now have my middle detail all finished up, which is a total of 10 rows for me, and my width is roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to get started on our side panel. So since we all should have ended along the bottom, we're going to now do our Suzette stitches. So from where we're at, let's all chain 1 and flip our work. So our Suzette stitches are fairly easy. It's just going to be a single crochet and double crochet into the same stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into that first available stitch, starting with 1 single crochet, and then into that same stitch that our single crochet is in, a double crochet. So yarn over, insert, pull through 2, pull through 2, and that is our first Suzette stitch set. Let's do another one. Now after every Suzette stitch set, we are always going to be skipping that following stitch because that double crochet counts as that stitch. If we work directly into there, we will be accidentally increasing. So we're going to skip 1 into the following, insert with another Suzette stitch set, which is a single and a double crochet. Now all together we should have 2 Suzette stitch sets. So there's 1 cluster, there's the second, let's do 1 more. Skip 1 into the following, a single and a double crochet. And we're going to continue on with our Suzette stitch sets until we have 2 stitches left. So we have made our way all the way down with our Suzette stitch sets. We should all have 1, 2 stitches left, and into that last stitch we're all going to do an increase of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, into that first stitch, insert, into that last stitch with a half double crochet, into that same last stitch with a half double crochet, and then same last stitch with a third half double crochet. And now that's it. We're only going to be increasing into every other row, so our falling row is just going to be straight up Suzette stitch sets. So to get that started, we're all going to chain 1 and flip our work. So just as a refresher, to do our Suzette stitch sets, find that first stitch with 1 single and a double. Again, skip a stitch into that following with a single and a double, and that's it. We're going to continue to skip a stitch and into the following, insert with a single and a double, making our way all the way down until we have 2 stitches left. And just as a really quick tip, each Suzette stitch set is going to be worked into our previous row's single crochet stitch, just to make sure that we get the texture that we want. So just to show you guys, since I just finished up a set, we're going to skip that following stitch. We can tell that that's a double crochet because it's a little bit taller than the following stitch, and then into that next stitch is a single and a double. Like I said, I'll meet you back when we all have 2 stitches left. Alrighty, so we are back. We made our way all the way down with our second Suzette stitch row. We should all have 1, 2 stitches left, and into that last stitch we're all going to do 1 half double crochet because we'd like for the bottom to be blunt. So just yarn over, into that last stitch, insert with 1 half double crochet, and that's it. Now let's just get started on the following row. So chain 1, flip our work since it is another Suzette stitch row, and make your way down till we have 2 stitches left with our Suzette stitches, and then we'll do the increase together just once more. Alright, so we're back. We are nearly finished with our third Suzette stitch row, and we're just going to increase together once more. So at the end of every odd Suzette stitch row, we're going to do an increase of 3 half doubles. So yarn over, skip that second to last stitch, and then into that last, insert with 1, with 2, and then with 3 half double crochets. And our following row isn't going to have any increases or decreases, so chain 1, flip your work, and then just make your way all the way down with our Suzette stitch sets. When there's 2 stitches left, 1 half double crochet into the last stitch, and that's it. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have a portion that can stretch over to the corner of our underarm, making sure that our half double crochet middle detail stays at mid-chest. And I'll meet you back along the bottom or right after an even number row, so we can get started on our underarm from there. We are back, and we have just finished up the side panel. Now, just counting my Suzette stitch rows, I have a total of 8 rows. This width is roughly 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters, or my total width is 7 inches or 18 centimeters. Now what we're going to do from here is our underarm. So what we're going to want to do is place this up to ourselves, making sure that the point of the middle detail stays where you want the point to be when you're wearing it, but keeping in mind that we are going to have roughly about a 2-inch top band as well. Once when this is in place, we are then going to be inserting a stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top, right where the corner of our underarm is, and then we can get started on the underarm. So for those of you that have my numbers, I've inserted my stitch markers into the 8th stitch from the top. That's roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now since we should all be along the bottom, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, do our Suzette stitch sets all the way up until we all have 4 stitches left right before our stitch marker. Alrighty, so we're back. We've made our way all the way up with our Suzette stitch row, leaving the last 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches right before our stitch marker, and now we're going to do a decrease of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, we're going to skip that following stitch and into the stitch right after that, insert, pull through, into that following, pull through, and then into the stitch right after that, pull through for a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Then yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops, and that is our decrease of 3 half doubles. Now we're going to be decreasing into every other row, so our following row is not going to have any increases or decreases, so just chain 1, flip our work, and then do our Suzette stitch sets all the way down, closing off the row with a half double crochet, keeping the bottom blunt. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, do our Suzette stitch sets all the way back up, leaving the last 4 stitches so we can do a decrease together just once more. We are back. Our third underarm row is nearly finished. We should have all left our last 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, and now we're going to do another decrease of 3 half doubles. So all that's going to be, again, is yarn over, skip that 4th to last stitch, into that 3rd to last, pull through, 2nd to last, pull through, last, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 5 loops, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have an underarm portion that can stretch over to mid underarm, making sure that our half double crochet detail is staying at mid chest. And I'll meet you back once we finish up an odd number of underarm rows, so we should all end along the top, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back just to show you how we're going to get started on the other side. We are back, and my underarm portion is all finished. Now I just did 3 underarm rows, or a total of 11 Suzette stitch rows. Now this width is roughly 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters, or my total width is 8 inches or 20 centimeters. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now we're just going to get started on the other side because it is going to be an exact repeat as this side. So all we're going to do is start by inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of our ribbing detail, and then basically just repeat. So we're going to do our Suzette stitch sets, making sure that we're increasing the same way that we did on this side for the same amount of rows, and then finish up with the same underarm that we did just now. When we have that, do the chain up of 1 and cut. The entire front panel will be finished, and I'll meet you back so we can get started on the back panel. We are back. I have just finished up the entirety of my front panel, and I now have a total width of 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters. I did do a chain up of 1 and cut right after my last row, and now we're just going to get started on the back panel. So getting started on my back panel, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for our last underarm portion. So for those of you that have my numbers, I had a total of 51 stitches. So for my back panel, I'm going to make a total of 51 chains. And I actually already have the entirety of my back panel all finished up, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and now we're going to get started on our Suzette stitches. So into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with our first Suzette stitch set, which is always a single and double crochet into that same first chain. Then right after that, we're going to skip that following chain into the chain after that one, a single and double, and continue this until we all have 2 chains left. Now we should all have 1, 2 chains left, and now we're going to do an increase of 3 into that last chain. So yarn over, skip that second to last chain, and into the last, we're going to insert with 3 half double crochets. So there's 1 into that same last chain with a second, and into that same last chain with a third half double crochet, and our first row is finished. Now our following row is going to be a Suzette stitch row, so we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and just do our Suzette stitch rows all the way down with no increases and no decreases. So find that first stitch, insert with a single and a double, skip a stitch into the next with a single and a double, and continue this until we all have 2 stitches left. We've made our way down, and we should all have 1, 2 stitches left. Now since we're at the bottom of our even number row, we're just going to be putting 1 half double crochet into that last stitch. So skip 1 into that last stitch with 1 half double crochet to keep the bottom blunt. And from here, we're going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as the front panel, which it should be a total of odd numbers. When we have those amount of rows, I'll meet you back along the top, so right after we do an increase, and then we can get started on the width of our back panel. Alrighty, so I am back and my underarm portion is all finished up. Now from here, we're all going to make a chain, since we all should have ended along the top, for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on the front panel's underarm. So for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 8 stitches there. So from here, I made a chain 8. Then all we're going to do is do our Suzette stitch rows, working our way across our back with no increases and no decreases, for roughly the same width that we had for our first shoulder row all the way across to our last shoulder row. And once we have that, we're going to do our underarm, but the underarm is actually going to be done exactly the same way as the front panel. So just to talk you guys through that, insert your stitch marker into the same amount of stitches that we inserted it into for the front panel. So for me, 8 stitches. And then we're going to do our underarm rows for the same amount of underarm rows that we had for the front panel. When we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back so we can seam everything together. Alright, so the entirety of my back panel is all finished. Just to let you guys know the amount of rows that I have for the entirety of my back panel, I had 3 rows for my underarm, a total of 34 rows for my back, and now a total of 37 rows. And I did do a chain up of 1 and cut right after my last row. My width is roughly 11.5 inches or 29 centimeters, and now we're ready to seam our sides. So let's place our front panel on top of our back panel and insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Insert your yarn onto your hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're going to do a single crochet seam. So find that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet. Let's do this again. Next stitch in the front panel, insert, next stitch into the back panel, insert, and single, and continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat on the other side. Alrighty, so we are back. Everything is all seamed up, and now we're ready to get started on the shoulder band. But first things first, we're going to single crochet across the top of our front, and then later across the top of our back panel. So let's all get started on the front. So flipping our work right side out, meaning all of the seams that we just did are now along the inside, we're going to insert our hook into the top corner stitch of the front panel, and then we're going to do a single crochet row alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. So let's all insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And let's all start by finding our first side row, which this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with just 1 single crochet. This is my following side row. You can tell because it's a little bit lower, it's a divot a little bit. I'm going to insert my hook in through that top loop and insert with 2 single crochets. So there is 1, and then into that same top loop there's 2. Let's do the next set of rows. This is my following side row. I'm going to insert into that top loop with just 1 single crochet, and then into my following side row with 2 single crochets. So there is 1, and then there is 2. And that's it. We're going to continue to alternate between 1 and 2 single crochets into every side row, including into the top of the half double crochet rows as well, until we reach our stitch marker or our middle stitch, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our single crochets, and we're worked into that side row that's right before where our middle stitch marker is. Now the amount of single crochets that we just made needs to end on an even number of stitches. So for those of you that are like me and it actually ends on an odd number, we're going to be inserting our hook into that same side row and adding just one more single crochet. If you already end on an even number, you guys are good to go. Now what we're going to do from here is just into that in-between stitch where we insert our stitch marker, we're going to insert our hook in through there with one single crochet, and we have to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into the top of that single crochet so we know where the middle is. So into that single crochet, insert your stitch marker. And then from here, continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, making our way all the way up. Now not counting our stitch marker stitch along this side, this needs to end on an even number as well. So just as a reference, for those of you that needed to add an extra stitch on this side, you will definitely be needing to add an extra stitch on this side as well. So once we reach our last side row, just put one extra single crochet into that side row. We should have the same amount of stitches on this side as we had on this side, and then do a chain of 1 and cut. Alright, so our single crochet row along the front panel is all finished. Now we're going to do the same thing along the back, so let's flip our work over. I have already finished my single crochet row, but all you guys are going to do is insert your hook into the top corner stitch of the back panel, and then again alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. This needs to end on an even number of stitches as well, so if you make your way to the end and you have an odd number, just go ahead and add one extra stitch into that last side row, and then do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we can get started on the actual band portion. Alrighty, so let's get started on the width of our shoulder band. So what we're all going to do is first make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up, meaning all the seams are along the inside. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into the second stitch away from our middle stitch and inserting only in through that front loop. So this is my middle stitch. We're going to count together 1, 2 stitches to the right and insert our hook only in through that front loop. And then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook. Then we're going to pull through, and we're going to do front loop double crochets into the stitches on the other side of our stitch marker. So we're all going to yarn over and insert our hook starting into that stitch with our stitch marker in it, and we want to make sure that we're leaving that stitch marker into that middle stitch for when we make our way back around. So we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. There's our first front loop. Let's do this again. Yarn over into that following stitch, insert into that front loop only, pull through 2, pull through 2, and again yarn over into that next stitch's front loop, insert, pull through 2, pull through 2. Continue with one front loop double crochet until we get the width that we'd like for our shoulder band to be, keeping in mind that it does need to end on an even number of stitches. I would like for my band to be roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to be doing 10 front loop double crochets. I am back and my front loop double crochets are finished. Now we're all going to get started on our following row. So chain 3, that doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and flip our work. Now we're going to be putting one back loop double crochet into every stitch. So yarn over, find that first stitch from our previous row, insert, pull through 2, pull through 2. Again, yarn over into that next stitch, insert, pull through 2, pull through 2, and continue with one back loop double crochet into every stitch. And we should all have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. So for me, since I had a total of 10 double crochets, for this row I should have 10 as well. Now that we put one back loop double crochet into every stitch, we're now going to connect it into the base. So what we're going to do is slip stitch into the second stitch into the base's back loop. So all we're going to do is count up 1, count up 2. Into that back loop, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, pull through everything with a slip stitch, and that slip stitch does not count as a stitch, that's just to connect. And then to work our way up to the following row, we're going to slip stitch up the following 2 stitches into the base. So there is 1, and then into that following stitch's back loop, pull through. We want to make sure that we're always working into the back loop whenever we connect our rows, because once we make our way back around, we're going to need these stitches to connect into. Once we've slip stitched into those following 2 stitches, go ahead and flip your work. And put one back loop double crochet into every stitch, so yarn over. Finding the last stitch from our previous row, not inserting your hook into any of those slip stitches, insert with 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch, and we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left. So once we reach the edge of the front panel, and then we can get started on the shoulder band. Alrighty, so we are back. We have made our way all the way up to the corner stitch of our front panel. We should have been worked into that last stitch, and now all we're going to do is do back loop double crochet rows, not attached to the front panel anymore, making sure that this can fit around our shoulder, and then reach the top corner stitch of the back panel. So what we're all going to do, no matter if you guys are along the bottom like me or along the top, we're just going to chain 3, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch again. And just continue to repeat our back loop double crochet row with no increases and no decreases until we have a shoulder strap that can wrap around our shoulder, like I said, to the top corner stitch of the back panel. And I'll meet you guys back along the bottoms so we can just work straight into the back from there. Alright, so I am back. The shoulder band portion is all finished up. I now have a total of 22 rows, and just the shoulder band portion is roughly 6 inches or 15 centimeters. Now we should have all ended along the bottom, and now we're going to slip stitch it into the top corner of the back panel. So what we're going to do is fold our strap in half, making sure that it's not twisted. And then all we're going to do is slip stitch it into that top corner stitch of the back panel. So insert, yarn over, pull through to connect it. And then we're going to slip stitch into that following stitch into the base as well to work our way up to the following row. Slip stitch into there. And then from here, we're going to work into our band, putting 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. And that's pretty much it for the back panel. At the end of this row, we're all going to chain 3, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch again, and we're going to connect it into the base the same way that we did the front panel, but it doesn't need to be connected within the back loops anymore, so just make your way all the way across until we don't have any more stitches left to work into, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. I have just made my way across my back panel, and now we're going to do the same shoulder portion that we did for this shoulder portion over here. So from where we're at, no matter if we're along the top or along the bottom, chain 3, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then continue to repeat that row until we have the same amount of rows as we have for this shoulder portion over here. And for those of you that have my numbers, I have a total of 12 rows here. So starting from this edge row, I'm going to do a total of 12 rows. And once we have the shoulder width that we need, we're now going to connect it into the base, and then we're going to finish up our shoulder band. So really quickly, this is going to be different for everyone. For those of you that ended along the top like me, hang tight, I'll show you guys how to connect the following row. But for those of you that ended along the bottom, y'all are lucky, y'all get to just single crochet it into the top corner stitch of the front panel, slip stitch into that next available stitch, and then continue on with our back loop double crochet rows, basically the same way that we connected it into the back panel. Now, for those of you that are along the edge like me, we're going to get started on our first front band row. Our following row is not going to be a part of the shoulder. We're all going to chain 3, flip our work, put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch, leave the last one, and then I'll meet you back to show you how we're going to connect it. Alright, so we made our way all the way down, and we left our last stitch. Now we're going to get started on our last stitch together, so let's all yarn over, insert our hook into the last stitch of our shoulder band, yarn over, and pull through 1, for a total of 1, 2, 3 loops on our hook. Then we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of the front panel. So insert your hook in through there, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through 1, 2, 3. So leaving that last one. So yarn over, pull through 1, 2, 3 loops for a total of 2 loops. Then we're going to insert a hook into that following stitch into the base as well, so into the front panel. That's our next stitch. We're going to insert, then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 to get 1 loop on our hook. And that is how we're worked into the first 2 stitches, and this is counted as our first row for the front panel. Now let's get started on the following row. Slip stitch into the following 2 stitches into the base, so there's 1, there's 2, since we need to work our way up to the following row. Flip our work, and then put 1 back loop double crochet into every stitch. We should have the same amount of stitches as our previous row. And then from there, continue to do our back loop double crochet rows, connecting it into the base, basically the same way that we did working across the back. And then once we reach the last stitch that we have right here, right along the edge of the shoulder band, we're just going to continue what we're doing, but then working into the back loops that we left for ourselves since we did this first row within the front loops. We're going to continue on with this until we reach our stitch marker, and then I'll meet you back so we can seam everything together. Alright, so we're back. We have made our way all the way down with our back loop double crochets. We don't have any more stitches left to work into because we have worked into that stitch marker stitch, and now we're just going to seam it to the back. So I'm going to flip my work over and take a look at the inside of my piece. So all we're going to do is from our stitch marker is count out the available stitches that we made for ourselves, so these back loops right here, for the amount of stitches that we made. So for me, I made a total of 10 back loop double crochets. So from this stitch marker, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then insert my hook into that 10th stitch. And now we're going to do a single crochet seam, so the same seam that we did for the sides. All we're going to do is yarn over, pull through everything. Find that first stitch into the front panel, first stitch into the back, single crochet, again, first stitch into the front, first stitch into the back, and single crochet. Continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up one and cut, and then I'll meet you back. Alrighty, so our shoulder band is all seamed up. Now we're ready to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up. And then we're going to insert our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam. Then we're going to single crochet along our armhole. So working our way up our underarm, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way up our shoulder. And then underneath the shoulder band, 2 single crochets into every side row. Then repeat that all the way down. So let's get that started. Insert your yarn onto your hook. Pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Finding our first side row, this is mine right here. Find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. Finding our following side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to insert into that top loop with 2 single crochets. So there is 1, there is 2. And again, following side row with 1. And continue this until you don't have any more side rows left to work into. This is my last side row. Then just 1 single crochet into every stitch, working our way up our shoulder. We've just worked up our shoulder, and now we're going to work into the bottom of our shoulder band. So I'm going to flip my work over. And just to do the first one, find our first available side row, find that top loop, and insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, into that same top loop, there is 2. And we're just going to continue this, making our way all the way across the bottom of our shoulder band. Then single crochet into the rest of our stitches, making our way all the way down. Slip stitch into that chain space, and then I'll meet you back. And if we end on an even number, add 1 more additional single crochet into the last side row to end on an odd number. Alrighty, so we've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row. What we're going to do from here is just single crochets in the rounds while doing a decrease into the last 4 stitches until it becomes nice and snug. So this is going to be pretty easy. From where we're at, we should have all slip stitched into that chain space. Now we're going to chain 1 and then just do our first Suzette stitch. So find that first stitch and insert with a single and a double, so this is per usual. Skip a stitch, and then into the next, another single and a double. And I'll meet you back when we all have 4 stitches left. So we've made our way all the way around with our Suzette stitches, and we should all have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left. Now we're going to do a decrease of 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, skip the following stitch and into the next, pull through, into the next, pull through and into the next, which should be the last stitch, pull through, then yarn over, pull through all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. And that's it. We're now going to slip stitch it into that chain space that we made when we got started on this row. That's pretty much it. We're just going to continue to repeat this row until this becomes nice and snug on our arm. So just chain 1, flip our work, Suzette stitch all the way around while doing a decrease of 3 into the last 4 stitches. When our sleeve is nice and snug on us, I'll meet you guys back just so we can extend it and then finish up our sleeve. I'm back. I have a total of 9 of my decrease rows. My length is roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. And now all we're going to do is our Suzette stitch rows with absolutely no more increases or decreases in the rounds until we get the length of the sleeve that we want. And I'm going to stop mine right about where my elbow is. So just as a refresher, after we slip stitch into that chain space, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, do our Suzette stitch all the way around, so the same way that we've been doing it until we have 2 stitches left. Then we're going to half double crochet into that last stitch to keep that edge blunt, slip stitch in that chain space, and then repeat. I'll meet you back when we have the length of our sleeve all finished up, and then we can finish up with our cuff. Alrighty, the length of my sleeve is all finished up. I have a total of 21 rows. My length is now 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters, and we're going to finish it off with our cuff. So from where we're at, we're all going to start by making a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly an inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 5. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our first row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off for the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. Let's do that again. Into that next chain, insert, yarn over, pull through everything. And once more into that next chain, insert, gently pull through everything. Continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain, remembering not to tug too tightly, otherwise the following row can be a little bit too tight to work into. Now that we're at the base, we're going to connect it into the base. So find that next available stitch, insert your hook. We're all going to yarn over and pull through everything with a slip stitch to connect this odd number row. That slip stitch does not count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that next stitch. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So just to do the next one, insert your hook into that next stitch's back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, and gently yarn over and pull through everything. Continue this until we reach the end of the row. Then at the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the base just so we can connect it together once more. Alright, so our first 3 rows are finished. Now we're going to connect it into the base, so find that next available stitch, insert your hook in through there with a slip stitch to close off this row. That slip stitch into the base does not count as a stitch. Then once more, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. We're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. Alrighty, so we're back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together. So let's all make sure the work is with right side out and right side up. So how this seam is going to work is we're all going to start by finding that first available stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. Then we're going to find that next available stitch into the back panel, find that back loop and insert only into that back loop. And when we have 3 loops left on our hook, we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. Let's do this again. Into the next stitch, into the front panel, insert into the front loop, like that. Into the back panel, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us. Yarn over, pull through everything, and just continue with this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Then do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we just did here on the other side. And now that both sleeves are all finished up, we are all done. Last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!